Hello gamers, Powered Heal here. And today we have a WoW video for you. It's going to be a little bit of a different type of video. It's going to be a more generalized video. It's actually kind of a video for the developers as well. If any devs happen to see this video, it'd be cool if you guys watch, because I think there's going to be some pretty good points in this one. It's not necessarily an original video because I got the idea from actually another creator. Granted, I'm not really able to just react to the video or put the video in the description because I don't think the video is actually YouTube appropriate because it references another server at some point, right? So I'm trying to be really careful with that, but I think the content of the video was good. I can tell you kind of vaguely what the title is. It's basically something like Blizzard will never compete with X server, something to that degree. So you guys are probably aware of all the the recent drama going on around a particular server, and that's what this video is referencing. And they're basically, the point of the video is just that they're saying that Blizzard will never be able to replicate what that server has going on, and there's 5 reasons he mentions for that. And I wanted to kind of go into those and talk about what I thought, because there's some points that he has that I think are pretty reasonable and some that I think aren't so reasonable. I want to go through all 5. And yeah, I mean, hopefully if somebody from Blizzard is watching, he can work to get these addressed, because I think he has a bit of a point. And like the main argument that he's making is that there's some people out there, I don't know if people at Blizzard necessarily think this, but there's some people that think that the reason why people play on private servers is because they're technically free and they don't want to pay the $15 a month. Now, I myself have always been skeptical of this. I don't think that really has any, decision-making leverage in why people play on these servers at all, right? $15 a month is a super reasonable price, especially because there's no box price for the classic game. So the amount of hours you get out of the game, if you play even like a moderate amount of time, like the amount of entertainment hours compared to pretty much doing anything else is just absolutely obscene with World of Warcraft. So the cost of paying $15 a month, I don't think is the prohibitive thing for most players, right? And he's arguing that, yeah, it's not the cost, obviously. It's the fact that Blizzard doesn't handle these 5 things. We'll kind of get into the heavy ones first, and then we'll kind of work our way into the stuff that's later. So the first thing he mentions is the bots. Now, his claim is that these private servers are, just pretty much bot-free. Obviously, they're not going to be completely bot-free, but the idea is that they have a drastically reduced capacity for bots. I would tend to believe him. A lot of the people I know that play P-server content, this seems to be their experience as well. They don't really see many things that look like bots, and the GM seem to be on top of everything. Now, there's a couple of caveats here right off the bat, right? Obviously, these servers are much smaller, even the ones that kind of get big, right? They're much smaller than like a normal Blizzard Classic era launch would be, like when they relaunch for Anniversary or something like that. There's also just less incentive to bot because they're smaller, right? So it's like if you were going to make a bot farm for World of Warcraft, would you rather bot the normal game where there's going to be a lot more people playing and you can have more people to sell gold to, or would you rather bot in TWoW where they're going to be more aggressively pursuing botting, and there's not going to be as many clients to sell to, and a percentage of that population in itself may be sort of like anti-RMT, anti-bot, so not going to buy anyway, right? So I think that that's a fair point to kind of lead off with, but I think that what Blizzard could kind of learn from this is that even when we look at the Anniversary, I think there's a lot left to be desired there in terms of anti-botting stuff. Like, it's crazy how at various points during Anniversary, I could just like go fishing somewhere and you would just see like hordes of fishing bots like standing together with all the weird names. You could who the dungeons where you have like these mages with these weird names. Like it's so clear that there's bots, and this is why personally my suggestion to Blizzard would be, I think you guys need to convince the higher ups or something like that you guys need a little bit more help in the botting category, and any automated metrics you have, or any automated processes rather, I'm sure those are great in terms of finding bots, especially the more subtle ones. But there's also a ton of bots that seem to be able to kind of get to max level, or at least get to the point where they're able to, turn profitable. They're just sitting out there fishing forever, right? Or they're farming, DM East forever and stuff like that. And I've personally seen bots in Ungaro where when I've been farming there that, just weeks and weeks and weeks, like literally months and months, it's still the same bots there, right? And these things are clearly bots. And literally, the thing that it makes me think of, right, is that if I had powers on my character, like if I had, like just a mod ability or something like that, I could just be banning these people, while playing the game. Now, I'm obviously not saying you give players the power, but what I mean is, like, if you had some type of GM person in the game, it wouldn't even have to be an actual GM, but if they had some type of tool where they could teleport to different zones and just, like, visually look at what is going on in a lot of the places where it would be common for bots to frequent, right? And then, you identify somebody who's potentially a bot, and then you investigate them a little bit more, you could ban a lot of these people, like, so quickly, right? And it's not like you guys need a tribunal to do this or anything like that, right? So it's your game ultimately, and you don't even need a reason to actually ban people right now. Obviously, you don't want to be banning innocent people, but there's some of these players that it's so obvious that they're bots, right? That it would be very easy for you to use your current systems, which I assume are automated, and combine them with somebody who is essentially doing like an Overwatch type thing, like not the game, but like literally just being on the server watching over certain areas. Even like a one person, I think, could make a substantive difference a day if you had them like a shift for every person. So, if it was like an 8-hour shift, 8-hour shift, 8-hour shift. So that'd be like 3 people a server. Even something like that, I think you could make a huge dent in the bot population on these servers if they were trained properly. Because especially in Classic, in other versions or in other MMOs, it can actually be more difficult because I feel like the threshold that bots have to get profitable is a lot higher. In Classic, they really don't start making too much gold until the higher levels, right? And maybe if you get your subscription from another country or something like that, you can have the bot be profitable, quote unquote, relatively early, but the amount of profit it's going to generate probably isn't worth the trouble in setting everything up if you actually get these guys really quickly, right? So I think there's like no excuse for me to see bots running around Ungaro Crater like actually months at a time. That is just insane to me, right? Because there's just so blatant, so obvious, and there's so many opportunities that the company would have to prune these bots by this point that it's insane. Like I'm not expecting to never see a bot again in the game, but I think if you combine whatever you're doing now with people actually, in the game looking for stuff that kind of slipped through the cracks of the automated system, that's probably the best possible outcome. Now, I'm not necessarily like biased towards a human element there, right? If you guys think that by adding another, I don't know what you guys currently use, what you call it, some type of AI detector or just, some type of script that you use to find bots, if you guys think doing more of that would be more successful, that's fine. My only argument is that because we see so many bots get through and manage to kind of persist in the late game like this that are such obviously bots, there must be some type of flaw in that system, right? So it's not that I think it's useless. It's not that I think you guys shouldn't use it. But at this point, it doesn't seem powerful enough to catch even some incredibly obvious bots. And if that's the case, then you really do need to have like a person on the helm with experience that is kind of looking for these types of things, right? People also talk about like the ban wave stuff and how it's like, oh, we are taking care of the bots, but we're just waiting for the ban wave. That makes no sense to me, right? Because I think way more harm gets done to the botter by banning them quicker, right? I would need to have this explained to me. I guess like what I've heard the explanation is that like they're trying to find like other bots through that bot potentially. But I mean, again, like I've seen bots in Ungaro operate for like 2 or 3 months, like literally every day they're in the crater. I mean, I'm not in there every day, but they're in there every day I'm in there, so I assume they're in there every day. Obviously, right? There's no way it's just coincidence that they're on when I'm on, right? So they're in there every day, basically, for months on end, and they're making so much gold, just allowing them to exist like that, to be operational basically 24/7. So even if the idea is that you're trying to collect more information, there has to be a better way than this, right? Than to leave them operational for like 2 to 3 months at a time. This is absolutely insane, right? And I'm not saying that this is the case for the majority of bots, but I'm just saying that like there are definitely a bunch that slip through in this way and generate tons and tons of gold, over the course of like 2-3 months playing the game, which is absurd. So next thing that he talks about is RMT. Turtle WoW, very strict on RMT. Now, to be fair to you guys, I do think that we've seen a little bit of crackdown on the bots, and I'm hoping that this is a precedent you guys are trying to set for Classic WoW or Classic Plus going forward, or whatever you guys are going to call the new Classic update. So that's good. And likewise, it seems like we've had a lot of cases of people being reported as well for RMT, right? And I'm totally for that. I'm actually super skeptical whenever I see people on the Blizzard forums that are like, oh, I didn't do anything wrong, and because I've got a bunch of accounts, and at periods of time I've played this game quite a bit. Like my friends call me like a Chinese farmer sometimes when I get really into a given release of the game. And like at one point I was playing literally on 3 accounts in Season of Discovery, farming chests and like the Tarnor Sea. I was like manually doing it all myself, right? Just with auto run and my characters bumping into walls and stuff like that. So I mean, of a player who is like suspicious for the system because they play so much and the amount of like characters they're controlling at once, like it would be me, right? And I've never had anything even remotely happen. Granted, I have had interesting situations. Like I've had people threaten to report me, and then I'm kind of having conversations with them in chat, and they're realizing, okay, this guy's not a bot. He's just like crazy that he plays this much, right? Or he's actually trying to play like these 3 things at once or something like that. So, I guess maybe that protects me a little bit, right? But realistically, if you're a player that is kind of in my situation and plays the amount that I sometimes do play, then realistically, you're going to want to try and protect yourself in that way too, right? In other words, like if somebody's coming at you saying like, I'm going to report you bot or something like that, like I'll always talk to them because I understand the suspicion from other players because they're so used to seeing bots everywhere in the world. So I don't have actually a problem kind of like explaining myself to other players in that way. Obviously, this is not ideal. I'd probably rather just do it to like a GM or something, like if they had GMs pop up and ask players, what's going on. But yeah, so obviously, like I'm kind of doing things to protect myself in the sense that I'm being cooperative whenever things like this kind of come up. But still, I think I would be a prime suspect, definitely. And if tons of people were getting false flag banned, then I'm very surprised I have not gotten false flag banned once yet, right? So I think a lot of these people are kind of full of it, In some cases, they may not even be like habitual gold buyers. Like what might happen is they might buy gold on like one character or one account or something like that. And, they only do it like one time for like a specific item or something like that. So they think that they're safe, and then they actually get caught. And then they try and run this interference because in their mind, it's like, oh, but I only bought it for this like one time or something like that, right? So, they have a great rationalization in their head for why it's okay that they did it, because it was just one time. There's other people who do it way more and stuff like that. So they feel justified in trying to launch this crusade against Blizzard to unban their account or something like that. But I think in most cases, this is BS. There have been cases where people have reported they've gotten banned and then they've gotten unbanned. And, it was claimed to be done through like an automated system or something like that. So I'm not saying it never happens, right? But I just think that if it does happen to you, then it's probably pretty easy for you to get your account unbanned if you actually, legitimately did nothing wrong, right? Because we do have precedent of people getting their account unbanned who have been banned wrongfully, allegedly, right? So yeah, I think if you get your account banned and they won't unban you, there's probably a high chance that you are participating in some illegal activity, right? A lot of people probably not going to want to admit this, but I just think that's how it is at the end of the day. So it seems like you guys have been aggressively pursuing a bunch of these gold buyers, which is great to see. And I don't know the exact terms of the bans that you've been giving out, but I think like 6 months is like the minimum, you know? I think you should start off very heavy-handed. If it was up to me, I would actually perma people. I've suggested this before. I think what you guys should do is you should, before any type of new server comes out, like if you guys are going to do Classic Plus later on this year, before that launches, you should make an announcement that's like, look, anybody that buys gold in the server is going to get permed. Okay, so you set the expectation right away. You could even have it be something where you log into the game and you get a pop-up, right, that you have to scroll down to read. And, you know, obviously people aren't always going to do that, but I think if you make it short enough to read and you make it concise enough, that's about as fair as you can make it, right? You're obviously not going to have like a binding terms agreement like, you know, you technically have when you open every game. Nobody reads those, right? But, you know, if you have like a legitimate, concise warning that basically just tells people like, look, we know that in the past, you know, you buy gold, you get banned a couple days, get banned a week or something like that. That's not going to fly now. If you buy gold, it's a perma. And I would do it like that, personally. I think that's the best. I think as long as people know and understand, there's no excuse. If you want to do 6 months and not actual permas, that's fine as well, in my opinion, because 6 months is pretty damaging. Obviously, right, that's a huge amount of time they're not able to play and pretty much ruins their new fresh or whatever. So I think 6 months is arguably fine. Like if you were to have banned somebody for 6 months in the Classic Anniversary, it's basically like their account is done, right? So I'm fine with that. Either way you guys want to go, but I think like the minimum should be like a huge time period, like 6 months or something like that. I'm fine. Actually, you know, and you could also just do like the entire season. Or, you know, Classic Plus might not technically be a season, but maybe for like the first year or something like that. Just a long period of time that the thing is like, hey, you made a mistake. This doesn't mean automatic account closure completely, but, you know, you're going to be completely screwed for this go around. I think that's a fair way to adopt the system. So I'm glad to see that you guys seem to be more aggressively pursuing people who are, you know, buying gold and stuff like that. And I also think that this curtails other bad behavior in the game. Like I was making a joke, actually. So I did an MC Soft Reserve on my Rogue, and I back in Classic Anniversary, and I actually won Quick Strike Ring. I think like there was like probably like, you know, insane amount of reserves on it because we were a very melee heavy group and everybody reserved it 3 times with a Soft Reserve. And I actually won this Quick Strike Ring, and somebody in my guild was offering me gold for it. And I was telling them, no, I don't want to do that. I don't think that's right. I was like, you know, even if I did think that's right, I was like, you're kind of crazy for trying to do that in the current environment because, you know, even if we break the trade up or something like that, like trading that much gold to somebody because he was offering like 35k or something like that, like over a short period of time is kind of like a very sus transaction, right? So I think even if somebody was, you know, not really looking to be ethical and looking to skirt the rules of the soft reserve by, you know, selling items that they're essentially soft reserving in the run, then they have to worry about this other factor that now, because people are getting punished for gold buying, you know, much more commonly, any type of crazy, suspicious big trade like that is going to kind of ring alarm bells in Blizzard's mind, right? So again, I think that the, you know, just having the threats of the bans there goes like well beyond even just normal gold buying. It kind of works with stuff like this too. So I think it's great that you guys are being more aggressive about it. And yeah, I just hope to see a big crackdown on stuff like this in Classic Plus. So yeah, that's 2 things. Dungeon farms, he mentions this, and it seems like you guys are taking a stance on that now. Obviously, you guys have kind of walked the original change back, you know, because it wasn't really implemented properly. That's fine. You know, obviously you want to implement it correctly. You don't want to be kind of messing over level 35 characters trying to get a quest item or something like that their friend is helping them get. Like, that makes total sense. So hopefully you guys stick to your guns and you have some backbone here and you re-implement a lot of what you were trying to do in the most recent patch where you were attacking the dungeon farms, and you do it in ways where, kind of only the dungeon farm is being hit, or, there's a little amount of collateral damage as possible, right? So I was super excited to see that, and, I was surprised to see you guys make that choice, and I was very happy, even though, like I said, you did walk it back, because you did give the explanation that you are planning to re-implement this. It's just that, it's not ready right now with the current way that you're dealing with things. So, again, I'm very hopeful on that front that you guys continue with this, and I want to give you props there, because I think it's awesome to see you guys finally tackling dungeon farms. It just doesn't make sense to have some classes be able to completely make an insane amount of gold, other classes not, right? Like the dungeon farming stuff is just so abusive, and everybody knows it too. Even the people who do it understand, in my opinion. They just, they obviously don't want you guys to change it because it benefits them, but yeah, it's awful, right? And it kind of defeats the entire purpose of like an MMO. It's almost like you're playing an ARPG, like you're seeing on the screen in front of me, where it's like I'm just in my own instances, completely uncontested. I don't have to worry about anybody else, right? It doesn't make sense. Like how I said it in my last video is that in the very least in MMO, your actions should kind of influence other people's actions, right? So that can be as simple as like if I'm in the Barrens and I slay a mob, that mob is no longer there for somebody else to slay. Or if I slay like a fire elemental in Ungaro, like, somebody else doesn't have a chance of getting the elemental fire or the, the essence of fire from that mob. So even small things like that really help contribute to the game world. And, having your own separate instance you can just farm in doesn't make any sense, right? Shards, this is it's kind of like the dungeon farm situation a little bit. People are going to make a comparison there, right? Because what it's essentially doing is, opening up another instance, quote unquote, of the area that you're in. So, like, if you were farming satyrs in Felwood, and they were kind of, packed, you could just transition yourself to another layer, and now maybe you have like a free layer you can farm the satyrs in. Now, the thing is because everybody is aware of this and everybody kind of understands how layer swaps and layer technology works nowadays, other people are trying to do this as well, right? So it's not really like having your own instance. Most of these layers, the amount of people that get on them kind of naturally distributes itself. Even if it doesn't naturally do it, the players will naturally distribute themselves over the course of a bunch of these layers. So personally, I think the layers are something you guys consider a necessary evil, and I kind of agree with you on that to some extent. Ultimately, what I would like to see is, instead of mega servers, you have other servers that are, kind of like just so multiple servers, right? And you merge them more aggressively is sort of the idea, right? I think part of the problem with this now, though, is that the concern would be, well, what happens if you have like PvP servers that have different populations, right? And you could do the population lock thing, but again, the problem that happens there is, like, let's say you have two servers, right? And they're both like 45% alliance, right? And the other one's like 55% horde, okay? And then you want to smash those two servers together, right? So every time you're doing this, you're kind of hurting your ratio a little bit of the server balance, and I think that's sort of what they're worried about, if that makes sense. And I think that's kind of why they're inclined to do mega servers, because it's a lot easier to just have a mega server that's at the PvP server from the start, and then be like, okay, anytime the pop gets this different, there's a hard cutoff limit on that server. We don't have to worry about anything that's going to come with merging or anything of that sort. So I can understand the argument for having a mega server. And if you do want to have a mega server, though, I think the new dynamic layering system you guys have is good. You should try and improve upon that, because for people that don't know, the original layering system, I'm pretty sure how it worked is like, if you had like 8 instances of Stormwind open, you would have like 8 instances of every zone in the game. Like whatever the highest layer zone you had open was, every zone would have that amount of layers. I think with the dynamic layering, what's going on is it's more dependent on the amount of players in that zone, right? So if you have 8 or 9 layers of Stormwind opened, you shouldn't have 9 layers of like Ashara or Ungaro open necessarily, right? It's just dependent on the population in those areas. So I think that's how you should approach it for sure. I also think that you should probably be a little bit less liberal with how quickly you're able to spawn additional layers, right? I think that how it currently works is probably a bit too much, right? It's still a bit too much. You end up with these layers that are kind of mostly dead, right? So I think that you should kind of walk that back. I think early on in the game's like a life cycle, like in the starting zones, it's fine to like aggressively layer those zones, in my opinion. But outside of those zones, and especially once the population spreads out, you should really try and rein back on the layers. So I understand you're thinking that layers are probably a necessary evil, and I don't think I'll ever be able to convince you guys otherwise. I don't even necessarily think that you're wrong. This is something I disagree with the guy that I watched the video on, right? I think that it's kind of a pipe dream to go back into the day, and he had mentioned something like, oh, just have a bunch of servers with 10,000 players on a server. 10,000 players is still way too many for a normal server with no layers. I think he has a distorted view of things via private servers because, sometimes I feel like the population of the private server is not super hardcore players, actually. In a lot of cases, a lot of people that are playing private servers are playing for many different reasons, and therefore you can kind of end up in these situations where it's like, yeah, you have 10,000 players on the server technically, but it doesn't really feel like a real 10,000. If you were to try and do that on Blizzard servers where you had like a 10,000 players per official Blizzard server and you didn't layer them at all, it would feel terrible. So yeah, it would like ruin a lot of things. You'd have to at least make drastic changes to the actual servers themselves in terms of the spawn rates and stuff like that. So I think the layering is somewhat of a necessary evil. Like I said, you could adjust the spawn rates, you can adjust other things, but I understand you guys probably want to keep that. I'm fine with that. I just think you should try and be cognizant of it and try and rein it in when you can, right? So that's my thoughts on sharding. Multi-boxing is the last one. I think you guys have already taken a pretty good stance on this. I think that like automated programs, you guys have kind of gotten rid of. I also think, honestly, that like I would ban multi-boxing that isn't like obviously like I would ban the type of multi-boxing Amphi is doing, I'll be honest. And I'm not trying to say that to like, oh, ban Amphi or something like that. I don't have anything against him. It's more just like, again, I would make an announcement beforehand that like, look, this style of multi-boxing is also going to be banned. Anything where you can see the characters are kind of clearly like simultaneously casting is pretty bad, in my opinion, right? Because it's mostly being done with something that is going to be automating. Now, in his case, he's not actually using like an automated program to cause the characters to like all fireball or whatever at the same time. He's using like a scroll wheel thing, I guess, or whatever, or a drag scroll wheel. I forget. He has a video where he explains what he's doing. But I mean, obviously that's kind of BS, right? Like you shouldn't be allowed to do that. And I think just putting it out there and telling people like, look, like if we see this type of thing of this guy running around in the Barrens and like all the 5 mages start their cast simultaneously on this thing, like we are going to ban you, because it's no matter how you're actually doing it, whether or not you're using a program to input the same key or you're using your scroll on your mouse or whatever, the result is the same, right? So we're not trying to ban people on a technicality here. We're trying to ban people because it's harmful for the game for you to have 5 characters that you can still control at once through some method, even if it's not actual automation, right? You should have to be tabbing between. You're either tabbing between and inputting the commands on every client themselves with your actual like fingers, right? So you're not pressing one and having something like auto tab through, or you're not having some weird tech where like the mouse scroll can apply to all the accounts, right? Or you have like literal multiple different PCs and you're like your fingers are on multiple at the same time. Like if somebody wants to do stuff like that, or if they're literally tabbing between accounts, playing them completely legit, that's absolutely fine, right? But again, like this whole thing of like we're trying to circumvent the automation by using these like weird scroll tech and stuff like that. Again, I'm not saying he's a demon for it because, it was in the game, right? So, and people weren't getting banned for it. I understand him taking advantage of it, but you should just make a precedent going forward that like if we see stuff like this, we are just going to ban you, and there's no like we don't need a justification for it, like because most players are not going to end up in this thing where they're like roaming around the entire world, and they're basically casting their abilities within milliseconds of each other. It's just it's absolutely insane. So I think if you guys tackle all those things, then like he said, all the players that are fed up with Blizzard servers and they're just wanting to play private servers, I think those players will come back. It's not the $15 a month. It really is just the fact that there's some things that are kind of executed better on these P servers. Now, again, it's not the level of difficulty on the execution may be easier, right? But the bottom line is that people don't want these behaviors in their game. They don't exist to the same degree on P servers, and that is why people like to play P servers. I hope this was kind of helpful from a player's perspective in terms of kind of what you can do to win that part of the audience back. And I think if you guys do make these changes, these people would just come back overnight. Like, I really don't think it's this like philosophical thing where they're just completely done with Blizzard forever. I think the reason why they say stuff like that is just because they assume that the company is never going to correct for these changes. But if they theoretically did correct for these changes, you would see these players come back. I mean, to be honest, I think players in reality would always rather play on an official server, assuming the official server they feel is operating properly, right? Because they never have to worry about the server being taken down. Like, their progress is never going to be deleted in the way it stands a chance to on a private server. So ultimately, if all things are equal, they would much prefer to play on the official servers, and it's really just the circumstances that the official servers exist in that is preventing them from playing there. So, I play the game on the normal servers, even in spite of everything, but I do think that this would make the normal servers a lot better, right? And so you would increase customer satisfaction for players like me who already play on your servers, and then in addition to that, you would be bringing back people into the fold who are kind of like done with Blizzard. They're like, oh, they're never going to correct for these problems. And again, nobody expects you guys to be perfect on the botting situation or anything like that, or the RMT, but it's just like the amount of rampant botting that has been happening in the past was absolutely insane. Like I said, I have seen instances where it seems like it's kind of gotten better in some degrees. I haven't really played much TBC though, so I don't have much experience there. So hopefully you guys just are way more aggressive about it in Classic Plus, both RMT and botting, and cracking down on dungeon farms and multi-boxing, and trying to limit the shards where you can. So thank you guys so much for watching and listening. If you like content like this, like, comment, and subscribe. And I just really love this game. I think it's awesome, and I think curtailing some of these behaviors will make the game much more enjoyable for all the people that are playing legit. So thank you guys so much for your time, and I'll talk to you guys next time. See ya.